Hello everyone, welcome back to the Atreyu Locs channel. So in today's video, I am going to be showing you 3 different ways to repair your locks, to repair your thinning locks at the root. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Atreyu Locs channel. I'm Atreyu, a semi-free farmer who is dedicated to bringing you the best tips to grow a set of healthy locks. If this is your first time, make yourself comfortable. I am glad to have you. So I thought it would be a good idea, since I have almost 8 years of having had locks, to just provide you with some options, different ways that I've used over the course of my lock quest to repair thinning locks. For those of you who are new to my channel, let me tell you that I have what we call hair that grows away from your locks. And so that means that as that new growth comes in, sprouting up from your scalp, it does not go into your locks. And so as a result, if you don't do certain things to incorporate that hair back into those locks, then those locks will thin out over time. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a trip back in time, actually back to 3 points in time, and I'm going to show you 3 methods that I've used that have worked for me, and I'm going to show you them in order of my least favorite, which is still, a go-to, to most favorite, and definitely like the one I use the most often. All right, so the first clip will be taking you back to when I was first learning that my locks thin out over time. I was starting to put the pieces together and figure out what's actually happening, and I found a solution, albeit temporary, but a solution that works. So let's check out the wraparound method, and don't laugh at how short my locks are. I have the type of hair that grows away from my locks. So what happens is, with time, as more time passes and I don't do a retwist, that new growth, it doesn't grow into my lock. It just kind of separates from my locks, and they become thinner at the base. So let me see if I can find one and show you what I mean. This is a good example right here. See how thin that is now at the base right there? So, it looks like, it's much thinner, right? Like it doesn't look like it is much thinner there. But in reality, all I need to do is grab the new growth and re-insinuate it back into the lock. So basically what I'm going to do is, and this is the new growth. So basically what I'm going to do is establish my part. Then I'm going to take this hair, this new growth, and I sprayed it before I started recording, but let me just spray it again just to reinforce that you should never twist your hair while it is dry. And then I'm going to wrap this around the lock. And as you can see, it's much thicker now. Now it's of course narrower than the rest of the lock, but that portion of your hair that you're retwisting is always narrower than the rest of the lock. But at some point it will thicken out. But you see how I've re-established my base basically. And I'm just gonna palm roll. And when I do this, I kind of like to let it kind of twist back a little bit, so that I can continually palm roll. Basically, I'm just trying to get the hairs into the lock, reducing the frizz. So I just continue to palm roll. If you notice at the root, it's not super tight or anything, right? But I'm just palm rolling to get the hairs in the lock. Okay. Then once I'm satisfied, then I will pin it. And that is how you re-insinuate the hair back into the lock. Okay, so as you see, that method works but as I said, it's temporary, okay? So it's a method that you can use, you know, if you're really super worried about your lock breaking off. Just grab those hairs at the base, wrap them around, and then palm roll. And you know, I've had some comments over the years where people say, wow, you're palm rolling the heck out of that. You're gonna like break it off, or gonna put too much tension on your scalp. It's not true. As I said in that clip, I like to let it roll back, and when it's rolling in the counter direction, that's loosening the tension. So every time I palm roll, when I release it, it rolls back, and then I can start again and palm roll. So it's not getting any tighter with each successive palm roll, okay? And yeah, I mean, it does help to get those locks back into the lock temporarily, but what I've learned is that as soon as I work out in sweat, or as soon as my hair gets wet, those locks have not matted up in the lock sufficiently, so that they, you know, when they tend to revert back to their natural coily, kinky nature, they retract back from the lock. And so it's not a surefire method to keep those hairs going into the lock. So that takes us to method 2, which is the crochet hook method. I think my locks were probably a little bit longer at this point. So yeah, but it'll be interesting. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, you can use the crochet hook to go in and grab that loose hair and mat it into the lock, like right on the spot. It takes a little bit of getting used to, especially if you've never done it before. But yeah, it definitely works. It's what people who get instant dreadlocks, it's the method that they use. And it is also the method that people without coily, kinky hair, people who have straighter textures, that's their go-to maintenance method anyway, because they have to mat those hairs in. They can't just wrap their hairs around the lock because it won't stay, right? Their hair is too straight and too soft for that. So yeah, let's check out method number 2 with the crochet hook. Alright guys, let's get started. So as you can see, I have tons and tons of new growth, but I do have a lock with a weak base that needs to be repaired. I have a lock that looks like it's thinning. I mean, that's kind of pitiful, right? You might think when you see that you need to cut off your locks, but you don't. All you really need to do is gather that new growth and re-insinuate it back into the lock. So that's what I do. You know, I try to section my hair off again with my fingers, you know, try to reestablish those parts, and I gather the new growth and I kind of just lay it initially on top of the lock, you know. And after that, I'm going to grab my crochet hook, 0.75 millimeters, and I'm going to insert it and start trying to pull some of that new growth into my lock, into the lock with the weak base, using a crochet hook. And so as you see, I kind of take it out. I'm trying to see whether or not I have the hook up or down. I guess technically it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, the important thing is that your hook is grabbing hairs and pulling it into the lock. And as you can see, I'm kind of I'm twisting that new growth along with the lock as I'm going in and out. Basically, with this method, you're just trying to create tangles, because if you don't create tangles, then that hair is going to slip right back on out of the lock, right? And you'll be right back at square one. So by rotating it, you're creating those tangles. You're hitting it from different angles. You're pulling things from the left to the right, and then as you rotate it from the right to the left, you know, you're pulling things from top to bottom, and then as you rotate it from bottom to top, you're pulling things diagonally and the reverse and stuff. And so every so often, I will kind of let go of the hair, regather the new growth that didn't take the first time. I mean, as you can see, it's already gotten a lot better, and I've already successfully pulled some of those hairs in. But I should mention that this is it's a longer process, okay? You want to take your time. Your hair is fragile, so don't expect to just rush through this, and you want to be very careful that you're not breaking hairs. You're just trying to tangle them. Now normally I never work with my hair when it's not wet or something, but to use products and to have your hair wet, that could create slip. I mean, even with oils, it could create slippage and really just be counterproductive to what you're actually trying to do, which is to create tangles. Okay, so I'm actually working on my hair dry right now, and yeah, it's getting better, you know, but as I said, yeah, that's much better than how it was when I first started out. But as I said, it's a long process, so you just have to take your time and just do a good job, be thorough. Alright, so here you're going to see that I'm rotating, and you'll even be able to see how that new growth is wrapping around the lock. See, I'm wrapping the new growth around the lock as I'm going in and out with the crochet hook, okay? And that's going to work to get that new growth intertwined into your lock. And so periodically I'll stop and kind of check out, see the progress, see what else I need to do, and slowly but surely, you know, that hair is getting insinuated back into the lock. So I'm going to keep at it. Alright guys, so I finally figured out the best method, which is a combination of both methods. As you see, I'm wrapping the hair around the lock the way I did in the first How to Repair a Lock with a Weak Base video. And now I'm going to take the crochet hook and go in and out and tangle the hairs that way. By wrapping it around the lock, at first you create a good hold, right? And then you just get to tangle those hairs along the length of the lock. This is important. It's important to bring that new growth down the length of the lock because that's where the hairs should have been in the first place. And so I kind of reestablish the section, and then I grab that new growth once again, wrap it around, because you're not going to necessarily get everything. You see I have that much new growth left still to put into the lock, so I'm going to wrap it around the lock. And then I'm just gonna go ham with my crochet hook in and out, getting that hair back into the length of the lock. So I can't stress enough that it's important to bring that new growth to like down the length of the lock, because if you think about it, if your hair had grown into the lock the way it should have, that's where it would have been. It's kind of counterproductive to put all the new growth at the top of the lock, right? The part that's closest to your scalp, because then that still leaves that area where that hair should have been very weak. And as you see, I'm coming in from a different angle, and I'm rotating. I'm just going in and out the way I've been doing all along. But this works to really tangle, by rotating the new growth, by rotating the lock, by hitting it from different angles. And this is the end result. I get a lock that is no longer has a weak base, that is attached to that new growth. It occurred to me that, hey, people that have straight hair, that have wavy hair, this is how they maintain their hair. They don't do retwist the way I do retwist. When it's time for maintenance work, they have people, or they even themselves, go in with the crochet hook. So why shouldn't I do it? As you can see, I'm very happy. I give a sigh because it was hard work, but I made it. Also, I should mention I did do the other side. I didn't record it. It was actually worse than the other lock. So yeah, 2 successes. All right, so as I said, it works very well. It works better than the wraparound method 1. It does take a little bit of know-how, a little bit of skill. It takes some getting used to, but once you know how to do it, it's as viable a method as any, and it's actually more permanent than method 1. So For those of you who are inclined to use that method, I say go for it. Just be careful, make sure you're using a crochet hook that's super small as you can find, because you don't want to break any of those hairs as you're going in and out, okay, of the lock, trying to mat the hair up. And now finally, we're gonna get to my favorite method, and as I've said a million times, because I've spoken about this topic a million times, maybe not quite a million, but you get the point. I learned this method from Yanni the lockologist. I think she showed it, or showed her sister doing it to her in one like really poor quality video, and yeah, I was like, okay, finally she's shown a technique, because you know how she's against techniques. But it is my preferred method, because if you know how to braid, then you can do this. You don't need to learn how to work some tool like the crochet hook. All you need is new growth and your lock, and you're good to go. So yeah, let's get to my personal favorite, method 3, the braid technique. Okay, so my hair is slightly damp, which is fine. And basically, you noticed in the insert that I needed 3 sections to braid, right? A lot of times you can do, when people do 2-strand twists, they use 2 sections. They do have a thing called 3-strand twist where they use 3 sections, but if you're gonna braid, you definitely need 3 sections. So you see how the lock is starting to kind of thin out because this new growth is not growing into the lock. So I wanna incorporate that back into the lock. So basically I'm going to take this cloud of hair and I'm going to separate it into 3 sections. So just kind of pull and see where I can get those sections. I don't want to like pull hair out of the lock if it's already in there, but you know, just gently, okay? Pull and try to get 3 sections. So here's 1. The lock is 1, so that's 2. And then here's another one over here, that's 3. Okay, and now I'm just going to start to braid. So now put that in front and just keep braiding, wrapping it around the other. Keeping 3 sections all the way down until you're done, so you've run out of new growth to braid around the lock. And once you've run out of hair, you can palm roll. You can also take the hairs and just kind of wrap them around the length of the lock like that, all the way down. And then follow that up with palm rolling. And now this hair is braided into the lock, and braided back into the lock, and you see how it thickened up, right? If you want, I'm not really overly concerned with it, but if you want, at this point, now that this hair is back into the lock, I could do the cinnamon bun method on here. So this is like new growth, right? So I could just spray that with a little water and then twist like I normally would, and then do the cinnamon bun method like that. And now that new growth is back into the lock and it's fully retwisted using the cinnamon bun method, okay? I know this is not probably the most intuitive technique, and that's why I left 4 locks out for me to demonstrate. So hopefully you will get the hang of it as you see me do it, 3 more times. So once again, here's a lock, which is not thinning out too bad because I've been doing a good job staying on top of it. But you see those hairs, all that hair at the scalp is definitely clearly not going into the lock. See that? So here's a lock, and I want to create 3 sections. So here's one right here. And then I want to find one on the other side maybe. Just kind of tug a little bit, see what hairs are already loose. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to start to braid, just like before. Maintaining 3 strands or sections of hair as you braid down the lock. Alright, and as you run out of hair, the palm roll, you can take those hairs and try to continue them, mixing them in with the frizz on the lock, and continue down the length for however long you want to. That'll help to get that new growth intertwined into the lock as well. And then, just as before, this is kind of like new growth right there, but first of all, you see that hair is braided into the lock, okay? So I can treat this as new growth. This isn't a ton of new growth, but just to be consistent, I will retwist it with my cinnamon bun method. So I'll spray it with a little bit of water, just a little bit. And then use the cinnamon bun method on it. So now I have 2 little cinnamon buns in the front. And that is how I have repaired my lock using the braiding technique. So you see a sticker there and a sticker there, okay? All right, so as you can see, essentially you're just braiding that new growth into the lock, okay? You're kind of crisscrossing the 3 sections around. I mean, that's how you braid, right? And if you don't know how to braid, you can watch tutorials where people show you how to braid. But yeah, that is all that you have to do. This is hands down my favorite method because I know how to braid and it's just easy to employ. And for me, I've noticed that once I braid the new growth into one of my locks or a few of my locks, I don't have to do that for several months later, okay? So that means when I start to get new growth after I've done the braid technique on a lock, that new growth that's growing after that point is growing normally into the lock, okay? It's almost like when you braid those hairs in, any of the new growth is kind of like directed in that same direction, which is to the lock, right? And it's amazing. So it's hands down my most favorite method. It's darn near permanent. You don't have to do it often. You don't have to worry about potentially breaking hairs because you're using a crochet hook. And yeah, I just love it. I really swear by it. And Yanni, the lockologist, you know, she uses it herself. So I think that it's probably a good technique to use. So these are the 3 methods or ways that you can use to fix your thinning locks. Remember, this is for locks that are thinning at the root. And this is for locks that are not only thinning at the root, but you must have some new growth to work with coming out of your scalp. If your locks are thinning close to the root, but you don't have any new growth, then none of these methods will work for you and you have a bigger problem, okay? And at that point, you should just stop all maintenance and try to get some new growth growing, okay? So stop all maintenance, don't do anything, and see if you can regrow those hairs. But yeah, if you have new growth at your scalp and your lock is thinning, then most likely you have hair that grows away from your locks. And yeah, you can employ method 1, the wraparound method, method 2, the crochet hook method, or method 3, the braid technique, my personal favorite, to fix that and get your locks back on track. Hopefully this video has been helpful. If you choose to love, do so unconditionally, because loving with conditions conditions the heart to not really love at all. This is Atreyu Locs, and I will see you next time. Peace. Hey, if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you are notified every single time I upload. How about that?